Hey, hello everybody. Welcome. Welcome to Ulta. Welcome to my bus. Is everybody ready to go have some fun today? Good. Is everybody ready to go have some fun doing some dog sledding today? Also good. We're going to have a good time down at Holmen Husky today, do some dog sledding. But if there are any of you here that are on the wrong tour and we're planning on going on doing something else today, do let me know. Raise your hand and we'll get you off the bus and where you need to be. Nobody? Okay, great. My name is John. I'm your guide today, and I will be along with you for the ride. But first, before we get going, I need to cover a little bit of safety information for the bus. There, if you look at the ceiling, are a couple of roof hatches. One is up close right next to me, and then there's one further back. If for some reason the doors don't open and we need to get out through the ceiling, those roof hatches can open. The windows can also be broken out if for some reason we need to do that. There's little red hammers that are along the wall in between the windows. We can use those to break the windows open. Now, I know you guys are going to be really excited when you get down to Holmen Husky. Please do not break the windows and jump out of the bus when you get there just to get to the dogs a little sooner. We'll use the doors. It's going to work out. Trust me on that. Okay, let's see what else. There is a fire extinguisher here in the front to my left. There is a first aid kit over this person in the front, also up here onto my left. And let's see what else. There is no smoking on the bus, so please don't do that. And most important of all, Norway has a law that says that you must have your seatbelt on when you are driving. So please, if you haven't put your seatbelt on, do that now. And if you're having trouble, raise your hand, and either me or the boat escort can help you get that taken care of. Okay, sounds good. Looks like everybody's ready. I'm going to go ahead and get myself strapped in, and then we'll be all ready to go. Okay, I'm all buckled in. Let's get going. To my left is Lars. He's our bus driver for today. He has keen eyes and steady hands, and he's going to make sure that we get safely to Holmen Husky and back today. I think as we start, I should probably cover the elephant in the room right off the beginning. I'm sure that there's a few of you back there who are thinking to yourself, I don't think that guide up there is 100% Norwegian. Correct me if I'm wrong. Well, I can't correct you. You aren't wrong. You are right. I'm originally from the United States. I'm not Norwegian. And although to make you feel better, just so I don't want you guys to worry, I'm not here either because of international espionage or the Witness Protection Program. No, I am here because, as the Norwegians say, på grunn av kjærlighet, because of love. I met a fabulous lady from Alta many years ago, and we got married, and she came to live in the United States with me. But then after the grandchildren began to arrive, you know how that is, the grandchildren always win. We came back here about 9 years ago, just over 9 years ago, and I've been here ever since, and absolutely love it. Honest to goodness, the county up here in the Arctic and Alta as a little town, one of my favorite places on earth. So I feel really lucky that I got a chance to come and live here. We're going to talk a little bit about Alta as we go, some of the history of it, a little bit about modern days and life here in Alta. So hopefully that'll be interesting. If you do have questions, when we get a break, feel free to come up to me and say, hey, what's the deal with this, or what about that? And I'll answer you if I can. And if it's something that might interest the whole group, then I'll talk about it on the way back. Let's see. So where did Alta begin? Well, Alta began about 10,000 years ago. And it couldn't have begun any sooner than that because 11,000 years ago, this entire region was buried under 3 kilometers of ice. Think about that. But about 10,000 years ago, the ice had receded and the coastline was clear. And people had come around from sort of over by Russia and along the coast here. And they came to this region and settled for the very first time, as best we know, on that little mountain that you see up and to your right there. That's Kumsa Mountain, and there was an archaeologist that came here in 1925, and he discovered artifacts from the old days, 10,000 years ago, about halfway up that mountain, and there's arrowheads and tools and evidences of human settlements there, so that as far as we know is where people first landed. And then several thousand years ago, starting around 7,000 years ago, we have the famous rock carvings that are on the UNESCO Heritage Site a little further out of town at the Alta Museum. And so we know that people have been living here pretty continuously since the land first arrived. So nowadays, though, it's a lot less prehistoric and a lot more modern. We do have all the conveniences of a modern town, a modern city, even though we are so far north. We have fiber optic internet, and we have 4G on our phones. The power is almost always on. The water is good. The roads are in good condition. The roads stay open even in the winter, as you can see. But it is a small town. There's only about 21,000 people that live here, and that's in the whole municipality. There's only about 16,000 people that live here in the actual town of Alta itself. And to give you an idea of whether that's big or not, Alta is actually the biggest town in Finnmark County, which is Norway's northernmost and largest county. And Finnmark as a county is actually a little bit bigger than the whole country of Denmark. And yet up here, other than three big towns, there's Alta, and then there's Hammerfest with about 10,000 people, Hirkenes with about 10,000 people, and so that's 40,000 in the whole country of Denmark. In all of Finnmark up here, there's only 75,000 people that live here, and all but about half of them live in these three cities. So this is a land full of many things, but it is not a land full of people. It's a wild wilderness once you get outside of the towns here, and that's a pretty special place to live. So in terms of the way Alta was built, it was actually not the city of Alta here in the middle, and then where you'll see the city center that we're driving. It was actually a neighborhood called Elvebakken, which was back behind us, and then there was another neighborhood called Busakop, which is the one that we're going to get once we pass the city center. And other than those two places, there wasn't much else here. And it wasn't until a few decades ago that people began to think about building anything here in the center of town. It wasn't really the center, it was just a big empty spot, but they decided this was a good place to build. So this is where city center came to be, and now it's a full-fledged city center, at least for a little town of 20,000 people. You can see most of the buildings are off there to the left. It's very plain Arctic architecture, nothing particularly special, just practical buildings to let us get through both the summer and the winter, except for one. And if you look up ahead on the left, just through the trees, you're going to see an interesting silver spire coming up. And that silver spire is connected to the Northern Lights Cathedral, which is our newest addition here to the downtown area. It's a new church, opened up for the first time in February of 2013. And all of the final construction was finished in 2014. And we're very proud of it. It's a really unique icon, very beautiful on the inside, and very striking and interesting on the outside. So if you get a chance, come by town after the tour today. Maybe you'll have a little bit of time to come in on the shuttle. And if you do have a chance, go inside that church. It's a really special place. It's very modern and stark, but at the same time, it's really warm and inviting. Take a look to the right here. You'll see the little church spire that's off in the distance there. That is the old Alta Church, surrounded by its little graveyard there. And the old Alta Church, that's actually the oldest building in Alta. It was built starting in the 1850s, excuse me. And you think to yourself, whoa, wait a minute, that's the 1850s, wasn't that long ago. If there have been people here for 10,000 years, shouldn't there be old farm buildings and cobblestone old towns and that sort of thing? And the answer to that is no. There actually isn't any of that up here. And the reason for that goes all the way back to World War II. The German army invaded the north of Norway just along with the rest of the country and stationed a very large force of soldiers up here. About 20,000 or so German troops were stationed here. It was one of the largest naval bases that the Nazi army had. And in contrast, the number of people, the residents that were living here, was only about between 4,000 and 5,000 people. So that means that there were 4 to 5 times as many German troops here in Alta and the region as there were residents who were living here. So it was a pretty intimidating presence that was up here. But near the end of the war, as the Germans began to lose and had to retreat, they didn't want to leave anything behind for the Allied army that was going to chase them in. And so what they did was they rounded up all the people that they could find, not just in Alta and the big towns, but in all the tiny little fishing villages that were along the northern coast. And they took all the people that they could and they put them on freighters and troop ships, and they sent them down to the south of Norway to get them out of the way. And then with that process done, they set fire here to absolutely everything. So they burned houses and barns and fields and forests. And when they were done and when they left, there was pretty much nothing left except the church that was left standing there. It was it was in pretty bad shape. It was vandalized toward the end of the stay here. The windows had been broken, that sort of thing. But it was still standing. And that was one of the first things that the survivors found when the war was over and they came back up here. And so they actually, one of the first things they did when they came back to this region after the war was they held a church service in the old and ruined church. And that was sort of what sparked the determination to rebuild here. And rebuild they did. So it's been a long time, but the town has grown up ever since the end of the war. And it's kind of interesting to think my house in city center was built in the 1970s. And that's considered to be kind of an old house for Alta. Alta's been growing a lot lately, and so anything with that kind of vintage is considered sort of an old house. Let's see. We're going to be traveling out into the wilderness. This gives you sort of an idea of how quickly we go from city center to farmland to out in the middle of nowhere. So keep your eyes peeled as we go. It's a fun transition to watch. Talk a little bit about the industry. What is it that people do here for making money this far up in the Arctic? There's a few things. There isn't all that much heavy industry that goes on up here. There is the gas and oil industry to the north, Hammerfest in the north coast there, and there are some people that live here in Alta that work up there, so they'll do their time on the oil platforms, and then they'll come back to where they live here in Alta and wait for their next shift to take place. And then there's a rare mineral mine that's out on one of the islands in the fjord. But other than that, there's not too much in the way of industry. The fishing industry we'll call it an industry, is very prominent here. There is a lot of salmon farming that's going on in the fjord. And so that features as one of Alta's mainstays. There isn't really any kind of a fishing industry where the fishing boats come in from the ocean. That's kind of an old model. It's not really done that way anymore. So the fish that are being caught out in the open ocean, that's also being processed in the open ocean. So if you go down to the harbors here, you won't really see much in the way of fishing boats. A lot of what people are making their money with here in Alta is professionals. You'll have lawyers and doctors, some architects and engineers, a few programmers. There's also there's a lot of service jobs, so people working in supermarkets and daycares and all the things that help keep the town running. And there's also some infrastructure. There's people working on roads and keeping the power on and keeping the water going and that sort of thing. But that's kind of an overview of where the money is coming in from. It's a little surprising, but it's the service sector that drives most of the income. We're going to be coming up here. You're going to see it peeking through the trees here to your left. That's the Alta River, and as we come around the bend here, you're going to get a better view of that. The Alta River, for those of you who don't know, is one of the best, if not the best, salmon fishing river in Europe and quite possibly the world. It's very popular with people who have private jets who like to come up here and fish. It's even popular with the King of Norway, who likes to come up every year. He hangs out with the folks that build the Sortisneva Igloo Hotel every year. We never get to hear when he comes into town, but we do hear after he's left. And he's a real sportsman, a real outdoors type. So he has a real good time when he's up here. There's the river. And we're going to cross over that bridge here in just a minute and head to the other side. But the fishing is it's managed very closely. You can't just come up here in the summer and head out with a fishing pole and catch some fish. In the summertime, when the salmon are running, you either have to be one of the lucky few who can afford to pay the price to do your own private fishing, or you can be a local and you can enter a lottery. And if you're lucky enough to win the lottery, then they give you 18 hours on one specific day on one specific part of the river, and you're allowed to have one fishing pole out there while the fishing is going on. Any number of people can use that pole, but there can only be one for that winner of the lottery. So when you win and it's your turn, you invite your family and friends, and everybody has a big party down on the river, and everybody keeps their fingers crossed that they're gonna come away with at least one prize quality salmon, and then that's actually a fairly common thing. People come up with salmon that they have to hold with two hands because they're that big. So it's a real exciting time. There's also a separate day that's put in place for all of the people that own enough land to grow enough grass to feed one cow. And if you're lucky enough to have that land and that cow, then you get an extra fishing day down on the river. So it's a fun thing. So here we are in the farmland, and it already feels like we're kind of out in the middle of nowhere, even though the clock tells us we haven't gone very far outside of Alta. And as we come up ahead here and just off to the left, we're going to find the lovely farm that is Holmen Husky Lodge. So I'm not going to talk too much about the dog sledding itself. Actually, I'm not going to talk about it at all because that's what Holmen Husky is for. But I will tell you that they have very cute huskies, very friendly dogs, and a really great staff there you're going to have a really great time there. A couple of administrative things. The bus is going to wait for us while we are doing the dog sledding. And so if you need to leave a few things behind on the bus, that is okay. The driver will either be here or he'll lock the bus if he has to go away. Also, just so you know, the Holmen Husky is going to split us into a couple of different groups. So don't be worried. Everybody's going to do the same activities. We're just going to split it up a little bit so that it's a little bit easier to manage given the number of people that we have here. Okay, so, and then the last thing, we're going to be here for 2 hours, and there's not really anywhere to go, so I'm not that worried about losing any of you. But even so, take a look at your clock, it's on my watch, it says that it's 12:30, so at 2:30, we're going to leave and head back to the pier. So, but we'll give people plenty of warning before. Okay, so as soon as we come to a stop here, we're on our way.